She saw the red flags. She didn't question them. She walked away and never looked back. Let me ask you something. Why is it that the woman who doesn't chase, who doesn't beg, who doesn't even react, becomes the one he can't stop thinking about? It's not about playing hard to get. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about something deeper, powerfully deeper. When a woman knows who she is, what she brings, and refuses to entertain breadcrumbs, she becomes rare. She becomes the woman he fears losing, not because she threatened to leave, but because she could vanish without a word. That silent kind of strength, it's unforgettable. See, most men are used to being chased, to being fixed, to being forgiven over and over by women who just want to be enough for them. But the woman who never chases, she doesn't try to convince anyone to choose her. She's already chosen herself, and that terrifies him. In today's video, we're diving deep into the psychology of masculine energy, emotional detachment, and the magnetic power of a woman who stands still while he spins in circles wondering what he lost. If you've ever felt like your silence was louder than your words, you're exactly where you need to be. Let's talk about it. There's a reason emotionally mature women don't get chased the way others do, and it's not because they're lacking anything. In fact, it's the opposite. Emotionally mature women can be deeply intimidating, not because they're harsh or demanding, but because they reflect truth. And truth can be uncomfortable for men who aren't ready to meet it. See, an emotionally mature woman doesn't play games. She doesn't operate from insecurity. She doesn't use manipulation, and she doesn't chase temporary validation. She listens deeply. She communicates directly. She asks for clarity without drama, and she holds herself accountable. She isn't afraid of hard conversations, but she also isn't afraid to walk away when her needs are consistently unmet. That level of grounded energy, that's rare, and that's powerful. But it's also deeply confronting to someone who's emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or still operating from a place of ego. Here's the truth. Most people won't say out loud. Immature men often confuse emotional maturity with being too much. Why? Because a woman who knows herself forces him to look at himself. She requires depth. She doesn't tolerate half-hearted love. She's not impressed by grand gestures unless they're followed by consistency. And she doesn't entertain hot and cold energy. That makes her dangerous, not in a reckless way, but in the way that threatens to shatter illusions. An emotionally mature woman sees through excuses, delays, deflections. She's not going to argue to be understood. She'll quietly remove herself and protect her peace. And that silence, that calm removal of access, that's what shakes a man who thought he had time. Because with her, time isn't promised, access isn't forever, and her love, it's intentional, never desperate. So when men say they're intimidated by her, what they're really saying is, I don't feel ready to rise to her level, and that's okay. But the woman who refuses to lower herself, she's not waiting around for anyone to catch up. There's a kind of strength that doesn't raise its voice, doesn't slam doors, doesn't send paragraphs trying to prove a point. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's undeniable. It's the kind of strength that makes a man stop in his tracks, not because you chased him, but because you didn't. Silence, when it comes from a place of self-worth, is one of the most powerful forces in any connection. And the woman who knows how to use it, without weaponizing it, has something most people never master: emotional discipline. She knows when to speak and when to step back. She doesn't argue with disrespect. She doesn't negotiate with someone who isn't listening. She doesn't beg to be seen. She simply lets her absence speak what her presence no longer will. That's what shakes him. See, most people are addicted to reaction. They want to know they still have emotional power over you. So when you stop responding, when you don't retaliate, when you don't chase, it creates a gap they can't explain. That gap makes them wonder, did she stop caring? Did I lose her? Why is she so calm when I'm used to chaos? This is where the shift happens, because that kind of silence isn't empty. It's full of boundaries, full of clarity, full of everything you used to give away so easily. It's not silence out of spite. It's silence out of evolution. You're no longer interested in proving your worth. You're no longer trying to earn love that's inconsistent. You've realized that your energy is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. To a man who isn't grounded in himself, that's terrifying. He's used to women fighting for a place in his life. He's used to second, third, and fourth chances. He's used to being chased because he's emotionally unavailable and assumes everyone else will bend just to be chosen. But when a woman stops bending and stands tall in her silence, the game ends. Not because she's trying to win, but because she refuses to play. This is what they don't teach us. Your silence isn't weakness. It's not giving up. It's growth. It's strength. It's choosing peace over performance. And in a world where so many people equate love with chaos, your calmness becomes unforgettable. The man who thought he could breadcrumb you, confuse you, or guilt you into staying now, finds himself haunted by the version of you that no longer needs him. Because the loudest thing you'll ever say is nothing at all. And once he realizes that your silence isn't a tactic, it's the final answer, that's when it finally hits him. He lost the kind of woman you don't get twice. When we talk about masculine and feminine energy, most people immediately think of gender. But this isn't about being male or female. It's about energetic polarity. Every human carries both energies within them. The difference is one usually leads while the other supports. Masculine energy is about direction, purpose, clarity, and doing. It thrives on structure, problem solving, and achievement. It's forward focused. It wants to move, to penetrate, to conquer. It leads with logic, often suppressing emotion to stay on mission. Feminine energy, on the other hand, is about being. It's receptive, intuitive, emotional, and deeply connected to the present moment. It doesn't need to chase or control. It magnetizes. It creates space. It feels everything. While masculine energy may push to get results, feminine energy pulls by simply being. It invites, attracts, and amplifies what comes toward it. Here's where the confusion begins in modern relationships. When a woman is forced to live in survival mode, she shifts heavily into her masculine. She plans everything, pays every bill, makes every decision, controls every detail, because she has to. Over time, that makes her tired, resentful, and disconnected from her natural softness. And yet, when she tries to lean back into her feminine, many men interpret that as weakness or passivity. It's not. It's power in a different form. Likewise, when a man hasn't anchored into healthy masculine energy, he might default to being passive, indecisive, emotionally shut down, or even manipulative. He doesn't lead with purpose. He drifts. He resents responsibility or avoids it entirely. This creates a polarity mismatch. The woman becomes the container, and the man becomes the one being held. But deep down, that's not what either truly wants. In a balanced connection, masculine energy holds space for the feminine to relax. It creates safety, not just physical safety, but emotional security. And when she feels safe, she softens. Her guard drops. She becomes expressive, radiant, creative, alive. Her presence nourishes him, and in return, his groundedness stabilizes her. That's where attraction deepens, not in games or roles, but in energetic balance. This is why the woman who stops chasing is so powerful. She's not rejecting love, she's rejecting imbalance. She's refusing to carry the masculine for both people. She knows her feminine energy is a gift, not a tool of manipulation. And she'll only offer it to someone who knows how to hold it, not exploit it. So when a man meets a woman who's anchored in her feminine, he has two choices: rise into his mature masculine, or retreat back into the boy who still wants to be mothered. The difference between attraction and repulsion in relationships often comes down to this: is the energy aligned, or is someone out of position trying to play both roles? True chemistry isn't found in pretending. It's found in polarity, and honoring it without fear. When you stop chasing, everything changes. And not in the way you might expect at first. You don't suddenly become cold. You don't lose your ability to love or connect. In fact, you become more connected to yourself, to your boundaries, to your worth. And for the first time, the noise fades. The pressure to prove yourself disappears. You start noticing who's showing up because they truly value you, and who only stayed because you were making all the effort. When you stop chasing, you stop negotiating for love. You stop begging to be understood. You stop explaining your value like someone has to be convinced. There's no more overthinking every message. No more twisting yourself into something smaller just to be chosen. You stop trying to force connections that clearly don't fit, and in that quiet, you find peace. This is where your power returns. Slowly at first, subtle, but it grows. Because you're no longer living in reaction to someone else's inconsistency. You're no longer adjusting your energy to match someone who can't meet you where you are. You're standing still, and suddenly you're magnetic. The people who were only around because you chased them, they drift, they get uncomfortable, they say you've changed. But what they're really saying is you stop making it easy to take you for granted. Meanwhile, the right ones start to notice. They lean in, they match your pace, they value your stillness, because they've done the work to find their own healthy energy. Recognizes healthy energy, and your refusal to chase becomes a silent invitation. If you want access to me, meet me in alignment, meet me in consistency, meet me in truth. But let's be real. Stopping the chase doesn't feel empowering at first. It feels scary, lonely even, because chasing gave you a sense of control, even if it was an illusion. Now you're trusting, you're letting things unfold without grasping. That takes courage. Most people never develop. But here's the reward. What's meant for you won't need to be chased. It won't make you abandon yourself. It won't ask you to beg, shrink, or tolerate breadcrumbs. It will come with clarity, not confusion. When you stop chasing, you finally give others the opportunity to choose you freely, not because you pursued them into loving you, but because you created space for love that chooses you back. That's the difference. That's the shift. And once you experience the peace that comes from holding your own energy, from not chasing, from being okay even when someone pulls away, you'll never go back. Because now you know the woman who never chases is not the one who ends up alone. She's the one they remember. She's the one they regret losing. And she's the one who always walks away with her dignity intact. One of the hardest truths to face is this. Many women are unintentionally sabotaging their own peace, power, and potential by falling into patterns that feel like love, but are actually rooted in fear. One of the most common mistakes, confusing effort with worth. So many women believe that if they just try harder, love deeper, or prove themselves more, the relationship will finally feel safe and secure. But love doesn't work like that. If you're constantly overgiving, constantly initiating, constantly explaining your needs to someone who refuses to hear you, you're not in a relationship, you're in a performance. And the longer you stay in that role, the more disconnected you become from yourself. Another mistake? Thinking that setting boundaries will scare someone away. So instead of speaking up, you stay silent. You make excuses. You tolerate behavior that drains you because you're afraid of being too much or losing the connection. But the truth is, the only people who are threatened by boundaries are the ones who benefit from you having none. You don't lose people when you draw the line. You lose illusions, and in return you gain clarity. Then there's the trap of mistaking potential for reality. You fall in love with what someone could be, instead of what they're showing you right now. You hold on, hoping they'll change. You replay their good side like it cancels out the patterns. But love built on potential isn't love. It's a project. And you weren't born to fix anyone. You were born to rise. There's also the mistake of chasing closure from people who were never honest to begin with. You send one more message. You ask for clarity. You try to make sense of the inconsistency. But deep down, you already have the answers. You just don't like what they mean. Let this be your reminder. Closure isn't always something you get. Sometimes it's something you choose. And maybe the most common mistake of all, abandoning yourself to be chosen. You change the way you speak, dress, act, even feel, just to stay desirable in someone else's eyes. But the cost? You lose touch with the woman you were before you met them. You lose your voice. You lose your magic. And the irony? The more you abandon yourself, the harder you try to hold on to someone who never truly saw you in the first place. But here's the shift. The how to stop part. You pause. You reflect. You stop looking outward for permission to feel whole. You remind yourself that you are not hard to love. You've just been trying to get it from the wrong places. And then you return to yourself. That's the beginning of everything. There comes a moment when you get tired, not just physically, but emotionally. Tired of overthinking. Tired of waiting for a reply that never comes. Tired of trying to be the one who holds it all together while slowly falling apart inside. That moment, it's not your breaking point. It's your turning point. Reclaiming your emotional energy doesn't happen all at once. It's not a single decision. It's a series of quiet choices that build a stronger version of you. The version that no longer runs on anxiety, guesswork, or crumbs of connection. The version of you that finally decides, I'm done leaking my peace into places that don't pour back into me. One of the first ways we start reclaiming our emotional energy is by not responding to everything that triggers us. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every message needs a reply. Not every shift in someone else's mood is your responsibility to fix. You begin to understand that silence isn't weakness. It's self-preservation. It's choosing peace over pointless conversations and emotional tug-of-wars that leave you empty. Next, you stop obsessing over potential outcomes. You stop replaying old conversations, trying to find what you should have said differently. You stop predicting how they might react, or if they'll ever change. Why? Because you finally realize that constantly living in the past or trying to control the future is draining your present, and your presence is your power. You also start pulling your energy out of fantasy and back into reality. You stop idealizing people who show you inconsistent love. You stop pretending that someone's almost is good enough. You get honest with yourself about what you're feeling and what you've been ignoring. That kind of honesty isn't always pretty, but it's liberating. And here's what might surprise you. Reclaiming your energy doesn't always feel empowering at first. Sometimes it feels like grief. Grieving the version of you who overextended, who overexplained, who held space for people who never earned it. You feel the loss, not just of others, but of the illusion that if you just loved harder, things would be different. But on the other side of that grief is clarity. And with clarity comes boundaries. You no longer give your energy away just because someone asks for it. You no longer internalize someone's inconsistency as a reflection of your worth. You protect your space not with walls, but with standards. You walk away without guilt. You say no without over-explaining. You show up for yourself in the same way you used to show up for everyone else. And in doing so, you become full again. Full of peace, full of self-respect, full of emotional strength that no longer depends on how someone else feels about you. You no longer chase. You no longer wait. You no longer beg to be seen. Because now you see yourself clearly. And that is when everything begins to change. There's a certain type of woman a man never forgets. She's not the loudest. She's not the most agreeable. She's not the one who begged to stay or fought to be chosen. No, she's the one who walked away without burning the bridge, but also never looked back to see if he followed. The woman who stood in her truth so unapologetically that her absence echoed louder than her presence ever did. She becomes unforgettable. Not because she tried to be, but because she never needed to try. That's the woman you become when you stop chasing, when you stop shrinking, when you stop molding yourself into someone softer, quieter, smaller, just to make someone else feel bigger. You become unforgettable when you choose your self-respect over temporary affection, when you choose clarity over chaos, when you choose to leave even while you still love, because staying would have meant losing you. And the truth is, many won't understand your decision. They'll call you cold. They'll say you gave up too easily. But they weren't there for the nights you overthought everything. They didn't hear the silence in the conversations. They didn't feel the weight of carrying something one-sided. So let them talk. Let them wonder. Because the man who thought he could come and go as he pleased, who took your kindness as weakness, who mistook your patience for passivity, he'll remember you. He'll remember the way you held space for him, even when he didn't deserve it. He'll remember how you never needed him, but chose him, until you didn't. He'll remember how you never made him feel small, even when he made you feel invisible. And most of all, he'll remember that when you finally walked away, you did it with grace, not games. Be the woman who doesn't just take up space in a man's life, but one who leaves behind presence, one who changes the way he shows up for the next woman. Not because you fixed him, but because your absence forced his reflection. You don't need revenge. You don't need a comeback text. You don't need closure from someone who never gave you the honesty you deserved. You are your closure. Your evolution is the full circle. and your peace. That's your power now. The woman who no longer chases becomes the woman who sets the standard, not just for others, but for herself. So let this be the moment you remember who you are, not someone waiting to be chosen, not someone hoping to be enough, but someone who already is, and always was. Let him remember you, not as the one who stayed and suffered, but as the one who left, and never lost herself again. If you've made it to this point in the video, take a deep breath, not because you're finished, but because you're just beginning. What you heard today wasn't just about men, it wasn't just about relationships or who texts first or who chases who. It was about you, your energy, your emotional currency, your power, and where you've been spending it without return. So let's bring it all back. You learn that the woman who never chases isn't cold, she's clear on who she is, what she deserves, and what she will no longer tolerate. She knows love shouldn't feel like a battlefield. She's not here to earn someone's interest or prove her value through struggle. She's not addicted to potential, promises, or mixed signals. She's rooted in peace, and peace is her non-negotiable. You learn that emotional maturity is magnetic, that when you stop trying to fix, heal, or carry someone else's broken pieces, you begin to rise into your own wholeness. That kind of woman isn't just respected, she's felt, even in silence, especially in her absence. You learn that silence, stillness, and walking away can be louder than any words, that detaching doesn't mean you don't care, it means you care more about yourself now. You care enough to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. You learn that reclaiming your emotional energy starts with a decision, not to change them, but to return to you, to choose yourself, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when your heart still wants what your soul knows isn't safe. Now here's your next step. Don't just understand this, live it. Let your phone be dry if it means your peace is protected. Let some people go confused if it means you stay rooted in clarity. Let them wonder what happened to the version of you who used to bend over backwards. Let her go, she was surviving. But you're ready to thrive. And don't wait for someone to validate this growth. You don't need them to notice. You don't need the apology. You don't need them to say, you were right. What you need is to move forward like you finally believe in your own worth. Start pouring your energy into what feeds you, your purpose, your peace, your body, your boundaries, your glow. Start showing up in the world like a woman who knows she's not here to chase love, she is love. And anything that doesn't feel like respect, reciprocity, or real connection, you won't even entertain it anymore. Because this isn't about being hard to get, this is about being hard to forget. For all the right reasons, your power has never been in the chase. It's always been in your presence, and now, your absence. Now go live like the woman he never saw coming, and the one he'll never stop remembering.